Hey, Bob.
Hey, Karen. It's great to see you.
It's good to see you. We're back for another episode. It's so exciting.
I love it. I love it.
Well, I would like to introduce our guest today. Is that okay?
Yeah, go.
All right. So we have Greg Griesemer. He is a seasoned talent acquisition and HR expert known for his insightful contributions to the field. His work and company, 1130 Works, focus on optimizing recruitment processes and enhancing organizational culture, making him a sought-after consultant in the industry. And today we're excited to have him on Momentum Now to explore his latest insights and experiences in talent acquisition and how young professionals can best navigate the early chapters of their careers. So, hi, Greg. Welcome.
Thank you.
Greg.
Hey, Bob.
Thanks for being here. I've read some of your articles and listened to some of the podcasts that you've been part of. You have a lot of great insights, especially as an HR executive and a consultant in the space and talent acquisition. God, I think a lot of what you have learned can provide a lot of value to our listeners and young professionals of color. Let's start at the beginning, right? You had mentioned, I believe it was either a podcast or an article, that your first job was focused on being a recruiter. But when you met your boss or your supervisor, they said, I'm not going to teach you about recruitment. I'm going to teach you about building value-based relationships.
Yep.
Could you tell us about that and how you started and what you're doing now at 1130 Works?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be glad to. You know, it was an interesting start. I answered an ad in a newspaper that said, "Do you have no marketable skills and want to make a lot of money?" And you're good with people. And you're good with people. Are you good with people? Have no marketable skills and you want to make a lot of money? And I said, that sounds exactly like me. And so go into this interview and the gentleman's like, do you know why you're here? I said, no. He said, you're here for a recruiting job, but I'm not going to teach you how to recruit. I'm going to teach you long-term consultative selling, where the relationship's at the center of everything that you do. And so that really sort of launched my career and provided, I think, a foundation for how I approach, things even to this day. I had a lunch meeting today with a large organization, and we're having some interesting conversations and just talking about how they're messaging their compensation inside their firm. And I said, look, it's all marketing at the end of the day, how you communicate employee initiatives. There needs to be this marketing sort of wrap around it, or this sales wrap around it. And each sort of touch point is, in my mind, sort of a consultative sell or a way to sell. And so that's a skill that I'm still thankful to that gentleman today for teaching me. I spent, the first kind of 7 or years or so in an agency recruitment role, 100%, commission based. The company was acquired, and things started going a different direction. And so I sent 2 applications out, one to Johnson & Johnson, one to Merck. And I said, I'm going to go and work for one company like my father did. He worked for, one, he was a blue collar guy, worked for one company for 35, 40 years and then retired. And I said, okay, these seem like the best companies in the area. So I'll take a stab at it. I got hired off an internet application at Johnson & Johnson. At a time, there were 30 people in the recruiting organization. If you fast forward 7 or 8 years later, when I left, they were just working on the New Jersey-based operating companies of J&J at the time. When I left 7 or 8 years later, the organization was over or close to 250 people, and we were a centralized team across 18 countries. And so, that sort of evolution from an organizational standpoint really provided a ton of opportunities to grow in so many different ways. And again, some skills that I still find myself using today. And so, leaving J&J, went on to lead talent acquisition in a number of other life science companies before finding my way into a head of HR role at a specialty generic manufacturer later in life. And that was an interesting story as well. You get there, a recruiting firm hired me, said, we're going to be the next large generic pharmaceutical company. I show up, and the individuals that I'm meeting with say, why are you here? We just put all the jobs on hold, right? You're running talent acquisition. And so even more interesting, 8 weeks later, I'm now the head of HR. So I'm a CHRO. 8 weeks later, never having sat in an HR chair, but the owners of the company liked what I had done around change management and organizational design, development, and talent for the pivot that they were making. And so, as we started to sell that company off, there was an opportunity to sort of take all of these lessons learned from small and large life science companies and bring them down market to small, growing life science and tech companies. And that's what 1130 Works does. So we serve as an HR consultancy and service, doing everything from advice and counsel to infrastructure build and project work, to full service outsourcing. And then we do some recruiting work on the side as well. Although I'm very careful to say we're not a recruiting firm. We know a ton of great recruiting firms that can help, but we do offer some interesting solutions to our smaller clients that are looking to keep costs down. So.
That's an incredible run, but I want to take you back, right? Because, all right, this is exciting because I think just getting inside of the head of you've transitioned, but starting your first job, as a recruiter, and then getting into the head of HR and obviously ongoing work. But going back to this first thing about you had no marketable skills, right? So you, which is...
I still feel that way, Karen.
It's just hilarious that you answered that job posting, but obviously it worked out.
Yeah.
But, you said that this person taught you some really key lessons, right? So how does someone who's looking for a new opportunity, what should they be thinking about in terms of getting in, someone like you, their head, in terms of flipping those skills around and leveraging them so you pay attention and advocate for them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think that interview for me, what I saw there was a mentor, right? Without sort of knowing that was a word at the time. This is my first job out of college, right? I had done some other things which are going to remain nameless for a couple of weeks between college, but this was the first real job that I had. But I saw across the table from me an individual that wanted to invest in me. Right, invest time in me, that wanted to teach. And so I think that's an important, in your first job, I think finding a manager that's willing to take the time and invest in you is really critical. Most people, and this is not a stat that's going to surprise anybody, most people leave jobs because of the people they work for and they work with, not because of what they're doing or even how much they're making. And so I think, there is, if you have no marketable skills, that's okay. You want a job, I'll take any job, and don't take any job, right? Make sure that the person across from you is really going to spend time and invest in you and teach you something, right? And if the person isn't going to do it, then you take a step back and look at the environment. So when we talked about the environment of this first job that I interviewed for, it was in an open sort of bullpen, and it was learning by osmosis, right? So I could hear, Karen, what you're saying. I could hear, Bob, what you're saying on the phone. And so I could refine the way I was working as a recruiter, and again, all commission based, but I could refine it, and I was being taught without being taught. Now, they also had a great training program there. But the environment, I think, is equally as important as the person. So spend time asking the right questions to see, how willing they are to teach you. If it's, look, you're going to come in, you're going to sink, you're going to swim. Okay, thank you. All right, help me understand how you're going to help me swim. Are you throwing any life rafts, or life preservers in, to help me? Am I close enough to the edge that I can grab it, or are you just really, literally pushing me into the middle, and I am going to sink or swim, right? So sometimes there's that, that lean, but it's not the case. If you ask the questions, you can get under the hood a little bit.
So don't be afraid to ask those questions and really dig into the what about me part of the interview. What am I going to gain and how am I going to succeed?
Absolutely. I think you should be interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you. And I think, one of the things you'll see from somebody earlier in career is just, they don't feel maybe that they have the stance to ask those. those. Or on the other side, some people ask way too much, and there's starting to be expectations there and entitlements there that are concerning as well. And so you kind of see both ends of the spectrum, but there's a nice balance in the middle where you can really take time to prepare to ask those questions that are going to make, get you the answers to help you make certain that it's the right role for you.
And just another, like, how do you know when it's time to leave? Right. So you talked about, hey, I went to this new company. I was going to stay there for a long period of time, like my dad. I mean, that's kind of how I grew up, although it was starting to transition that, 20 years would be way too long, 10, 20 years. And then there's these discussions about, how long is too long and how short is too short. And I'm finding this next generation in particular, it's much shorter than I would really expect. Yep. But also you have to jump around to also increase your salary and your opportunity because those become a little slimmer within the organization. So how does a young person who has limited experience know when it's time to move on?
No, it's a great question. I think I always use, I've read an article a long time ago about sort of where is your mindset on Sunday night, right? Are you looking forward to Monday morning, or are you just sort of like hanging your head and you're dreading, and it's like, I don't want to be there. I don't want to get up. I don't want to. So I think to me, it's how excited are you? How motivated are you? Right? Are you, all the teams I've ever led, I could care less what people are doing. I want to know how they're feeling. So ask yourself, like, how are you feeling about this? Because if emotionally you're in a good place, and this is not, psychoanalyzing anybody, but you have to ask yourself, how do you feel, right? Are you feeling good about going to work the next day, about the people that you're going to see, about your opportunities for learning, about how you're being treated? All of that, I think, is the first place to start. And so I always use the Sunday night. Like, are you looking forward to Monday, or are you dragging yourself out of bed? And you'll know the answer to this automatically. If you're showing up and it's like, I don't know, I threw on something, I didn't do my hair today, I still have my pajamas on the bottom, right? And I just threw something over my pajamas, I didn't brush my teeth, but I'm in the meeting, I'm not prepared, like I'm here, yes, I'm punching a clock. Then you might want to start thinking about, moving on. So I think that's the first kind of litmus test for me. I think, the second is related to the career experience that you have, and how much of a chance did you really give the job? I feel like sometimes there's some things that happen in a job, and it's like, oh, well, that's terrible, and that's it, I'm out. And okay, that's one thing, right? Are you overreacting by leaving? So again, it's this sort of self-awareness that I think, is in this EQ that needs to be a little higher when you're thinking about making a job change at all. So
that makes sense. It resonates with me because, number one, really resonates because I had a job. I think I was there for like 3 months, and I would come home crying. I was like, yeah, that's not a good sign.
No. Right. Yeah. You mentioned something a few minutes ago about being in that first job and hearing calls from others in the office. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't help start to reflect of the value of being in the same place at the same time with your team, whether that's an office or a coffee shop once a week, whatever it might be. But in this post-pandemic world, it seems like it's really polarizing. We've seen a pushback to the office recently by some CEOs, which they probably regret that because of the backlash that we've seen. Do you have any advice or thoughts for our young professionals listening to this that either they haven't decided what their next opportunity might look like? And do you have any advice or thoughts around in-office, non-in-office, hybrid? What's the right mix, and how do you and should that even be part of the decision?
Yeah, it's, I thought years and years ago that I coined this work-life integration theme. I was so excited. I came up with this on my own. And then you find out it's been around for a while because I just wasn't reading the right things, right? But to me, work-life balance, work-life integration is such a personal it's a personal definition, right? The three of us would define that differently. So again, taking stock around, have you built your life on a virtual schedule? And there's not a way around it, right? That's the first. So is it a requirement? Is it a need, or is it a want? Right. I'm a big fan of counseling our clients to think about presence with purpose. Right. And so if you're going to ask somebody to come in, what's the purpose? What is it about? And so culturally, your company may not even know. I've seen at the end of the day, it's an executive that says, this is the way it should be. This is the way I think it should be. And so everyone's coming back. And so there's benefit to that, though, for early career professionals, because ultimately, your grades in school get you your first job. Right. But your experiences, and most importantly, your network and the people that know you and know the quality of the work, get your second job and your third and your fourth. I articulated this career journey that I was on. Johnson & Johnson's network got me every job until my last corporate job. And these were calls that I was getting from people that said, we could use someone like you. We know the things that you've done. Can you come here and do that as well? Right. And so those relationships are formed here. It's great, Bob, Karen, that I've met you. If I shake your hands and I see how tall you are and you see how tall I am, right, that takes the relationship to another level. Right. So there needs to be that. So if you're in a virtual environment, how can you find opportunities to your point, Bob, maybe once a week, once a month, just meet somebody for a coffee? It can be quick, right? It can be very quick if you're in the area. Everybody that lives in a shooting distance, right? Just gotta, within a shot, get there and shake their hand, say hello, have a 20 to 30 minute coffee, and then get on with your day. That just strengthens the relationships that you're building sort of virtually. So I think there is something to it. And I think, like you're seeing, there is going to be a lot of regret, though, because there's not a purpose to most of the companies that are calling people back. They're not really articulating the business case for why, other than things happen in the office. And that's fair too. If I'm walking by your office, Bob, I'm saying, oh, that's right, I got to talk to Bob about this. Otherwise, I've got it on a notepad, and then I've got to schedule time, and that might go 2-3 days out, and that just doesn't happen, right? Yeah. So again, I think there's value in the relationship side of it for sure, and the learning side.
Yeah, I've learned that hybrid, for me personally, is the greatest balance, because there are days where you're either doing administrative tasks or you're writing or you're focused. And it's great to be on the home front, home office, and focus on that. But being able to connect with others, I think I've seen twice as many interactions in the office, or maybe even 3 times, versus slacking people or calling people or having a quick phone call. And so what you talked about in your first job, I think that's very real. Mm-hmm. You can learn so much more about a business being in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
So for me, hybrid is the winning formula.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would agree with that as well. I think for a number of different reasons. I think the learning, the relationship building, the fatigue that can sometimes come. I mean, I think, we've seen companies really benefit from full virtual workforces, so much so that they've shifted their goal setting bar to a different level, because they're getting extra hours on either end of the day that aren't there in the commute time. And when they bring people back, they're still expecting those same goals to be met as if individuals are working those extra few hours, every week, every day. And it's that can be problematic for in terms of burnout and how individuals are navigating. So
that's an excellent point, because even now you'll work when you're sick, right? From home before you called out and you took that time for yourself. So that mental health and wellness has been interrupted in many ways because of virtual work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Also, you said something. I want to go back to something. I just want a clarification. So you said that grades get you your first job and your network gets you every job thereafter. So my big question is, what do online applications not work? or are they supplemental to the process?
No, online applications work. They do. They do. I think I wouldn't say it's supplemental. It's a requirement now, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the first step, and everything else around that then, I think gets it to happen. So there's not a way around it in most cases. Even you're even seeing that if you're referred. Oh, well, okay. Hey, all right, Karen, I need you to go online and fill that out. It's like, well, Greg referred me in. Like, I mean, you still have to go through this portal and this process. And depending on the company, there's requirements that they have from the federal government on how they need to ensure equity in fair and equitable hiring practices, and measuring it through a portal and a gate is the only way to do it, right? So you got to get everybody to line up at the gate, and then you let them through one by one, saying, nope, we treated everybody the same way, right? And then anytime somebody comes into a side door or back door, it's like, wait a second, that's a flag. So larger companies especially, yeah.
Got it. So still fill out the applications, but still build your network. That might give you a little bit of edge to get in front of, certain people, right? Because it is challenging, right? Especially with AI, and you have two AI systems talking to each other right now in terms of sometimes writing some of those applications or resumes, and then vetting those resumes as well. So that human touch becomes more important than ever. Those coffee chats are more important than ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's systems now that are starting to pick up on whether the resume or the post or was written by AI, right? Is this really you, or is this, someone else that's really a machine that's writing it, right? And so, there's people querying AI to see if you were querying AI, right? So this is going to get interesting as time, continues to wear on, and how much people are leveraging it to be them versus to enhance them, right?
Right. We can do a whole run on AI, but
yeah.
I have all sorts of things to say about just even that topic. I'll hold that.
Greg, we know that 1130 Works, your company that you founded and leading, supports organizations of different sizes, including startups. What should a young professional consider when looking at a startup versus a medium or even large organization, of a Fortune 500 company? What are the pros and cons, and especially in that those initial jobs that are starting a career? Do you think that starting a career with a startup is a better way to go, or at a large organization? Yeah, tell us more.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've not thought of which is necessarily better. I think it's sort of back to that work-life balance, and it's a personalization, right? In terms of which is better maybe for you. If you, I think startups bring a certain inherent risk with them, right? There's 90%, we work with a lot of clinical stage biotechs that are very early on. Some are well-funded, some are not well-funded. They're trying to get their first, drug through the trial process and into humans and into the market. 90% of them are going to fail, right? So when you go to work for a biotech, everyone sees the excitement of the biotech, what they're going to do, the potential. I've got equity. This could be a home run. It could really change my life. But they're not seeing that the probability is that it'll fail, right? That these drugs will not make it through. More fail than sort of make it, and definitely when you look at making it versus hitting the home run. So I think risk tolerance is a huge one, right? Now someone will counter me and say, well, your job's not secure at a big company either, right? And so you go there. But you have a little bit more, I think, a little bit more stability there. I used to joke when I was at Johnson & Johnson that we're all cogs in a machine that's been working for 150 years or so now. I think it's almost 150 years. Some cogs are just brighter and shinier than others, right? But like if one of us leaves, we're not going to stop the machine from working. We always felt that way. Oh, if I leave, come on, they'll never replace me. No, they will. They'll replace you. So pretty quickly. So I think the speed at which you like to learn and like to work is another thing as well, right? So risk tolerance is, your risk is higher generally at a biotech. The speed at which you have to work and learn is also going to be higher. So how does that fit with how you know that you learn? Do you need a little bit more space to learn? Do you need a little bit more training and development in a structured way, right? Most biotechs are unstructured. Most smaller companies are unstructured typically. You could get a level of personalization in some of these smaller companies that you might not get in a bigger company, but you're not going to be wrapped with the same support structure that you would in a bigger company. So, how do you learn? How do you like to learn? And ultimately, what's important as you think about starting out in your career, right? Is what is the role that you're being offered, right? Is it the exact same role into separate? Is it the same scientist role in a small company or a large company? Then think about the culture of those organizations. Most smaller companies do not have a purposeful culture, right? There's, especially startups are not leaning in unless there's an enlightened CEO. We found most are sort of just inorganically coming to a place or organically coming to a place because they've hired people they know. They've hired people that are kind of, that just evolve a set of behaviors, and that becomes the culture. Larger companies have established cultures. They've got programs that are reinforcing that. They've got performance management that's supporting those behaviors, right? And so, again, I think which environment really would you thrive in as you think about this? Some folks really are excited about moving into an unstructured organization where they can move fast and learn. And I don't know, I might not be here in a couple of months. This is awesome. Another person, that's terrifying. Right. And so they're like, I want to go here. I want a training program. I want, all these different classes I'm going to be able to take. I want to be number 5 in a team of, 5. And I want to be able to kind of get in there and learn and move slowly and do a good job and go home and collect my bonus at the end of the year and keep it moving. So others, it's not that doesn't excite them. That was my first manager at Johnson & Johnson told me that. She's like, you're going to either love this environment where you've got to play the game to get to retirement, or it will drive you insane at some point in time. And so I'm not at J&J, so that'll tell you sort of where my one of the best companies in the absolute world, just not a good fit for me, right? I have friends that are still there, thriving and just doing really, really well. It's a great fit for them. So you can't really look at it and say all 3 of us could go there and be successful. So
I think that's a great question about what is your risk tolerance, because like you said, it's just very different for everyone. I mean, I'm a fractional CMO. I've been doing this for a really long time. And so I would say my risk tolerance is pretty high because I've also been that for a number of startups. But the benefit that I've found is that it increases my acumen tenfold because I have to be ready. I have to, move fast. And when I go from place to place, I just keep, increasing at a much faster pace. But when I talk to other people about that, like you said, it freaks them out. I talked to a colleague the other day. They're like, even though they're unhappy in their job, they have to stay there for the stability and right. So I think that's an excellent point for people to reflect on, and it might change, right? Like in different times during your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I've been part of multiple startups, and I've also been part of organizations that have 120,000 people in international, right? So I found that for me, the startups were fast moving and ever changing. And I had more opportunity to take on additional responsibility or roles to try something out. And then in the larger organizations, they had more resources. And that was right. And that can be wonderful. But the downside in some larger organizations is that they have a method or a way that's been in place for years. We've always done it like this.
Right.
And so I think it is a super personal decision on whether or not to pursue opportunities at a startup or a large organization, and both have pros and cons. Just weigh the position as who you're working with. Like you pointed out earlier, Greg, I'd rather work with a great team in an okay job than an okay team with a great job, right? Position. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I share that with folks that we interview for 1130 as well. I said, look, this job isn't for everyone, and it's okay. In an HR role, working with one client group and one culture and one leadership team, there's a ton of challenges that are present there. We're going to ask you to do that 5 times over. So you're going to have 5 clients, 5 leadership teams, 5 cultures, 5 systems, 5 ways of working. You're also going to do things 5 times in a given year. And so your ability to learn here is going to be amplified as a result. And if that sounds awesome and you're bring it on, that diversity. Like I want to talk to plates and screws orthopedics manufacturer in the morning, and I want to talk to an AI company in the afternoon and a biotech, tomorrow morning, then please come here. That's what you'll have available. That's not for everybody though. And they want to go and see one of everything. And that's okay too. Right. And so it's incredibly personal, and finding sort of your center on that is the first step. Right?
So how does a young person, whether it's their first job or just early career, find and start to work with a recruiter?
Wow. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's typically through applications, right?
Okay.
Or looking at the recruiting firms that maybe specialize in the areas that they'd like to work in. So there are specialist firms, and this is where I might get some calls afterwards from my recruiting brethren here when I say some of this. But I feel like specialist firms will always be the best to connect in with, because they're spending 100% of their time in a given industry function, whatever that might be, versus a recruiting firm that's saying, look, we recruit across every industry for every function, versus, okay, no, I just do tech recruiting, and I just help developers find jobs. Like that individual is going to be well networked in the space that you're trying to push into. And so I'd say seek out specialist firms first. If your early career, take every call from recruiters that comes in. I mean, I still take calls today. I own my own company, and I'm still saying, sure. What do you got? Right? What do you guys do? But it's the best way. Early in my career, it was the best way for me to find out what the market needed in certain jobs. So I was part of a talent acquisition team, a manager running a team, anywhere between 5 and 50 people at one point in time. And I was getting calls for director jobs. Well, what do you need in that director role that I don't have today? And I found early on, I came from an agency environment, and I didn't have a good handle on regulations and sort of the do's and don'ts of hiring within a corporation. And so for me, when J&J was starting out around OFCCP compliance and the definition of an internet applicant way back, just to date myself a little bit, I said, I'll take that project. People are like, what? Like, I want in on that because I didn't know it. Right. And so I wanted to get that exposure and that information. And so, but that came from recruiter calls. And if I look back to a lot of the moves I made, they followed experiences that I was able to get that I didn't know I needed until a recruiter called me and told me I needed something for this job that I didn't have. And then I had an opportunity to seek it out either externally through learning or internally creating projects or volunteering for things when they cross my desk. So
that's great. That's great. And when you think about all the HR advice that you've been giving to organizations that engage with you, or when you were part of a larger organization, did you see some common career potholes for young professionals? And if you did, could you tell us about those and just advice in navigating those potholes?
Yeah. I think on the early career side, and these are folks that are interviewing maybe for their first job or they're looking to move, within. There's an entitlement tendency that sort of I showed up here for a year. Why am I not in this? Like I did this. I checked these boxes that said I need to do this. So now I should get that, right? And it's not always that easy or that clear or that clean cut, right? I think there's an understanding of it's not sort of only sort of what you do, but it's how you do it. And the how isn't always apparent when you look at a job description or you look at sort of career ladders or matrices that sort of try to help people, articulate a career path or a career journey, right? And so I think paying attention to how you do things and how you show up is really important as well. And so that's sort of one that that I would that I would point to, and that you honestly still see today. Right. I mean, there's just some people, this person has 30 years experience and they're still not worried about how they're doing things or how they're treating people. Right. And so that's not so don't be that person in 30 years, but don't be that person in 1 year or, up to 3 or 5 years in, either. So there's stories too around, look, handle your business yourself too, I guess is sort of part of, there was a time where people's parents were helping them negotiate and just this isn't really instilling confidence in, the company that you are going to be able to navigate challenges yourself. Right. Look, we all need, I love my mom and dad and right. I still draw on their experiences when I need them today. Right. But I would not ask them to call someone and negotiate.
Bring them to the interview.
Maybe never. Yeah. I would have never done that. Please don't even drop me off.
If my son asked me, I'd be like, what? No.
Right.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
dear.
And sort of on the opposite side, I've got 2 girls. They're now 13 and 15. And I read this, fantastic, book on, I think it was called What Girls Need. It was written by the head of the Baldwin School down here in the Philadelphia area. And it was sort of, it really articulated why there's some parity issues as girls grow up, sort of being told, be careful when they're on the jungle gym versus boys saying, go get it. Right. And then, not really being able to ask for what they want. And so they said, just start with simple things like having them order a pizza or, ordering at a restaurant on their own. Right. And I can tell you today, I've got girls that are presenting PowerPoints to me and negotiating for things that they want, or think they want, think they need, I guess I should say. Right. And sort of, and so I think there's these experiences that you can sort of help yourself with as well. Right. That could just be simple as you're starting out your career. Right. There's opportunities for baby steps inside safe environments to practice. Right. And look for those as well. And I don't think people do that. It's sort of, you're not going to show up and negotiate a job if you've never negotiated anything, never negotiated, if you've never negotiated or even asked for anything, it's not going to go well. So where can you find opportunities to practice sort of safely, right? Before you're put on stage. So
that's great. You talked about negotiation. And I'm just reflecting on some of the sessions I've been part of or educational materials that have been shared. And negotiation is such a great skill to learn about and internalize. What are some of those other cornerstone skills that you think young professionals should gravitate towards, learn, practice, and have part of their personal toolkit, if you will?
Yeah, I call them platform skills, but it's communication. It's speaking in small groups, large groups, speaking to audiences. Right, when you have those opportunities you know, prepare for them. That's where you want to, go into your network, go into the people that are surrounding you, all act and just and prepare, right, and try to really learn and take advantage of those. I went to college and I was sitting in a 20-person classroom. I went to a small liberal arts college, and I was sitting in a small classroom, and I would get choked up trying to talk about the book that we were reading. I had never done that in high school. I went to high school where if I went to school, I did my homework and I tested well. You almost got a B every time, right? So it was sort of like,
Nice.
it wasn't that, right? This college, but now I'm being asked to sort of, present my thoughts, defend my thoughts in some case. And it took me almost I remember calling my mom the first couple of weeks. I said, I don't belong here. And she said, you absolutely belong there, right? And here's why you belong there. But I had no experience in sort of this speaking, even in small group environments. And so, it's not only learning how to do that, but also learning how to pick your spots when you're in team meetings and group meetings. Not everyone, I heard this too late in my career after I made enough mistakes, right? Not everybody cares what you think, right? So pick your spots, right?
That's a fact. Okay.
That is a fact. And so learn when to pick your spots so that what you're saying is meaningful. Like somebody else told me, like, your dog is in every fight. It's so tired. No, it's not going to win. It's never going to win, right? So stop sending it out constantly. Send that dog into every fight. Like, you cannot possibly have an opinion that's that meaningful on everything that's said in a team meeting or a leadership or wherever you might be showing up, right? So, and that's a skill. I call that platforms, so this sort of communication within groups. I think that's something, in addition to negotiation, I think I would say would be a cornerstone, sort of skill and ability.
Can I add something to that too? Just because when you said that, it made me think of, it's also cultural awareness, right? Because, people from different parts, not only of the globe, but even within the United States, have a different way to approach conversation,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Or receive it very differently. You think about the New Yorker versus the Midwesterner, for example, right? Like so having that awareness that it may not, what you're saying may or may not be received in the same way, also because of those differences, right? I just want to tack on that little.
No, it's great. And it reminds me of this, and I just saw it on my bookshelf in front of me. So I'll cheat a little. It's called The Culture Map by Aaron Meyer. And it is such a great book around. And again, this was when I first got into my first international role. I picked this up, but it really is sort of the first time I encountered somebody, that was Dutch, and the way they spoke to me, I'm like, whoa, like just right between your eyes. But it's not, it's not because they're being, mean. It's just that culturally, this is how they're brought up. And I now, have apologized because as a American, I say things 3 times. It's not because I think you're stupid. It's just because that's how I speak. And I need to say it 3 times. Right. And I had a German colleague might say, do you think I'm stupid? Like, you've said this now 3 different ways. And I said, no, I don't. This is just sort of a cultural thing. Right. And so picking up, reading, right? Spending some time educating yourself on, there's cultures that need to be invited into conversations. They need to be invited in to participate, right? And so being aware of how other cultures speak, and if they're second or third generation here in the U.S., they're still growing up in those environments inside their homes, right? And they're speaking that way every day, and that just may be a communication, style culturally that they're carrying into the workplace, right? So educating yourself and understanding that, if you have a colleague who is of Chinese descent, you're likely going to have to invite them into the conversation. Now, that may be a wild stereotype, but these things and just being aware enough to look over there and say, okay, is that colleague participating? Do they need to, asking them what they think is okay as well, right? And helping them. So,
just quick cultural tip too. I'm Jamaican, so if a Jamaican says something 3 times, it's on and popping. All right. So just FYI.
That's good. I'll make note of that one. That's good.
Karen, is it is it time for a wrap up?
And I have one more question.
Yeah,
I just have to know. 11:30 works. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So 11:30 is after November 30th, which is a meaningful date in my life, and it was a time I was a single dad at the time of a 2-year-old and 4-year-old girl. So I raised my girls primarily, by myself for a long time, about 10 years or so, with a village, of course, not by myself. I can't ever say that, right? It took a lot of great people and family members to do that. But that was the day, November 30th, that for me stuck in my mind when I realized like how much better life was going to be ahead than what was behind. And so it's a nice way to just kind of keep me grounded. I thought of the works because frankly, that was just sort of, and you'll appreciate this maybe as a CMO. I thought that has a lot of play maybe in the future as a brand. I don't know, but and no one was doing it. So 1130.works became the website. We started as 1130 Consulting, and then we kind of shifted to that brand, 1130 Works, at a later time. So.
I love it. I'm glad I asked that question.
I am too, because I was wondering. I was going to ask after the show. What does it mean?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, always glad to share that. Always glad to share that story.
That's great.
Well, Greg, I'm going to give you a little recap of what I heard, and then Bob is going to fill in for whatever I missed. But you said so many great things, so I was jotting them down. So the first thing is be an eavesdropper. Right? Because you said to listen and learn from the people around you, right? That was one of the things. Assess your happiness level. So you said what's your mindset on Sunday night, right? How do you feel about your job, and you're assessing your happiness level around that. When you think about work-life balance or work-life integration, think about what's a requirement, a need, and a want, right? Grades are will get you your first job, and your network gets you your second, third, and future jobs. So build that network, have coffee meetings, meet people in person, because that's a different connection that goes a longer way. What's your risk tolerance? Which, I love that, that question. And also, how do you like to learn? So reflect on those things. Take all recruiter calls. So you can find out about the market and also learn about the skills that you need to develop for future roles. Yep. Handle your business yourself. Don't let your mama come and do your interviews for you. All right.
Check.
Develop those platform skills, particularly communication and public speaking, because those will get you very far. And lastly, not everybody cares about your opinion. So figure out when you should give it and when you should pull back. Those are my 10 things from Greg Griesemer.
Yeah. Nice job.
What I miss?
No, you got them all. Check. Yeah. Now, fun part, rapid fire questions. We'll toss you some questions. Nice, crisp answers, but if you want to tell a story, that's cool too.
Okay.
What was your favorite subject in high school?
Oh, probably history.
Nice. What was your least favorite subject?
English.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Wow. Stop emailing. So I'll give a little bit of a story on that one. So when I moved into an HR role, it was sort of stop emailing and you talk too much, right? So and again, this is all back to that. Not everyone really cares what you have to say, right? I was prone to getting into email battles or oversharing sometimes. And this is not too long ago. So that was the best piece of advice. And actually, it sort of circles back to an early piece of advice that I got when I worked at J&J, was to tighten it up a little bit, right? So don't be so verbose. Your points get lost, right? If you can't be succinct, which I'm at which could happen if I keep talking right now. So
that's beautiful advice. What's some advice that was not so good? What's some advice that you've received that you're glad you didn't embrace it?
Well, that's a tough one. That is a tough one.
Well, I think not being verbose is also bad advice because you're talking today and we got a bunch of advice from you. So, all right. So I think you can go either way.
Yeah, I appreciate the save on that as I froze.
Nice job, Karen. Karen.
Okay, just go with the flow.
No, I know.
Nice.
No, I love that.
It's a save. Well done. What's your greatest superpower?
I think for me, it's just the ability to connect dots, right? So for me, it comes naturally, right? I see sort of a little bit of a tangled mess, and I can start to create buckets and connections to provide a solution, relatively quickly. So I think it's just sort of a natural for me to do that.
Is there a weakness? What's your greatest weakness, and how do you navigate that?
Interesting. I mean, I don't really have any. No, that's bad. That actually, one quick piece of advice before I give you my answer. It's to be honest when you're asked that question in an interview, right? So we're talking to an audience that's out looking for their first job, or maybe, but answer that question honestly, because on this side of the desk, we know when you're not, right? I'm the hardest worker ever, Bob. And that's a weakness. No, that's not a weakness, right? Because the follow-up question I'm going to ask you is, oh, you used to work, what was your manager's name? Oh, Bob. Okay. If I call Bob, what would he say? Then you actually get a real, a real answer. For me, I think I have a tendency to regularly think I say things that I don't really say. And so, so my team, I'm like, I thought we talked about that. And they're like, no, you didn't. So because in my mind, I'm moving through stuff, right? And I've checked that because I did it, right? Yeah. And so what I've taken to now doing is, instead of saying, like, it used to be, we talked about this should have been done, right, in years past. Now I've sort of evolved to this place where I can say, did we talk about that, Bob? Like, I can't find an email. I can't find a text. I can't remember if we had a conversation about it. And so just to ask a little bit more questions and lean in a softly, because I know that I'm moving through things. I try to move things quickly. And in my mind, I might cover 10, but there's probably 9 that really got covered. So that's a bit of a weakness that I've just sort of picked up on. I also am not, if you do any of these strength finders or DISC, I'm not very empathetic, and I can't. Now, people, this is an guy. I tell this to my family members as well, and everybody, and I said, I don't do a good job of walking in other people's shoes well. So I try to, I think over the years, every year I try to get a little bit better. I can recognize when I'm doing it now and adjust quickly enough to help myself. And I tend to be overly sympathetic, which also helps a little bit. But, that's to me a big weakness that I don't know if it's a programming error or what. It's like a hardware at this age, right? You can only program so much hardware, right? It's not code. It's not software.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. So final question here. Greg, what's your why? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah. I think for me, on a personal level, it's always going to be for my family, right? They drive me, my daughters drive me, right? My partner drives me, right? Those 3 women in my life are the most important thing, that I have. I think on the business side, I just love the human aspect of business, right? And how can I help in any way I can make that, a better experience for the individuals that are coming. Because to me, without the talent, the business isn't moving forward. And so, just being able to contribute to that, to me, those are the 2 for me.
Thank you so much for being part of Momentum Now and supporting MVP and sharing all your lessons as a recruiter and HR professional. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for having me. This was awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And look, you turn those unmarketable skills into something amazing. So,
No.
Kaboom.
I'm still working on it, but thank you.
Thanks so much, Greg.
Thank you both.